I am nervous because for the first time in well over a decade, I'm on my way to a 10-mile time trial.
The good news is that it's not me I'm nervous for. We're at the High Wycombe CC Evening 10 to watch a rider who was pretty good at time trialling in the past. In fact, he's won a time trial stage at all 3 Grand Tours.
David Millar retired from professional cycling in 2014. He had a colourful career, turning pro with Cofidis as a 19-year-old in 1998 and winning the opening time trial at the Tour de France 2 years later. In 2004, he was handed a 2-year ban after admitting to taking performance-enhancing drugs. He returned from that ban in 2006 and soon after became an anti-doping advocate. By the time he retired in 2014, he'd racked up 30 pro wins, 19 of which came in individual time trials. He was twice second at the UCI World Time Trial Champs, but was stripped of his 2003 win in Canada. 10 years on from his retirement, David is on his own journey back to health and fitness, and also happiness. He's also back on his bike. He might not be quite as fit as he was in his pro days, but by most people's standards, and especially my standards, he is very fit right now. The question that popped into his head is how fast can a 47-year-old ex-professional cyclist go on his old 10-mile time trial course using the best modern equipment? Well, this evening, he and we are going to find out. We are in Longwick near Prince's Risborough. It's an hour or so northwest of London, and where David started competing as a fresh-faced 15-year-old. He turned up here with his mum in 1992 and still remembers his time, 23 minutes and 58 seconds. The course is the HCC 202. Every time trial course in the UK has a code. They're not very catchy. It's not your typical out and back. You go out, come back, pass the start, take on a second turn, and then it's on to the finish. It's also not completely flat. The official course record is 20 minutes and 4 seconds, set by John Mulvey 3 years ago, but David turned up to an evening 10 in 2007 and scorched around it a minute faster than that. He had a Scott time trial bike, some aero shoe covers, and a cotton cap. Fair to say that equipment, clothing, and things to wear on your head have come quite a long way since. The question is, how far have they come? Well, it's hammering it down with rain, so he's probably even more nervous. I've only really got one question for you. Why?
Yeah, I know. Why not, I think. I don't know. I think it's one of those things, Dan, that I said I'd never do again. And I suddenly got to that point in life where I've thought, well, I probably still should do it. I still can do it, so why not? And that's really the primary reason.
Talk us through the last 10 years. You retired in 2014.
Yeah.
Where did your sort of exercise part of life go from there, and where's it at now?
It dropped off a cliff, to be perfectly honest. I think, like many of us, at the end of the career, the reason I stopped being a professional cyclist was because I was burnt out. I was tired, probably more psychologically than physically. And so when it came to stopping as a professional, I didn't just want to stop racing, I wanted to stop riding my bike. And I wanted to stop doing sport. I thought, everyone's always said, you've got the rest of your life on your bikes when you stop being a professional cyclist. And I was like, here we go, the rest of my life. And as it turned out, life without sport didn't suit me well. And I think like many professional cyclists, I found myself in this descending spiral, mentally and physically. And it was only at the end of 2022 when I reached an absolute, I'd say, the most unhealthy, unfittest I'd ever been, unhappiest mentally as well, that I had this kind of turnaround point and realised I've got to sort myself out.
What's the power expectation for tonight over the 20 minutes there or thereabouts, and what did you used to do for that sort of time frame?
I think, judging by what I've been doing the last couple of months, probably high 300s. So 370, 380 is what I would expect it to be. If I can do more than that, I'll be really pleased. But I'm super curious because I've got all the modern tech. I've got a bike that I'd have dreamt of when I was a pro. I've got a speed suit that Castelli have made me, which is effectively the same as Remco's. I've got all the gear.
I think that's what I'm interested in. I imagine a lot of people at home are interested in, because we're always talking to them about how much faster the equipment is now. And I'm not sure people always believe that.
Yeah.
But tonight's the test?
Tonight really is a test. So the bike I'm riding today is a Factor HANZŌ. This is the specialist TT bike that's used by Israel Premier Tech as well. So it's exactly the same bike that'll be used at the Tour de France. There's this is pretty much standard setup for a Tour de France racer. The frame itself, as you can see here, if you're looking at it front on, I mean, there's nothing there. They've just reduced the frontal area as much as possible. The wheels, we use almost always a disc. These are the black ink, the disc with the asymmetric bulge on this side. Don't ask me why, I don't know. 3-spoke, which is pretty much de rigueur these days. I've gone for a 60-tooth big ring, just one ring, not two, no chain guard, which fills me with fear because I have lost a Tour de France prologue with a single chain ring and no chain guard. I'm using, I think I've got a 10-25 on there, but the idea of using this big ring at the front is that I'll be sitting mostly within 3 or 4 gears at the back, which keeps the chain straight and more efficient. It's got SRAM red wireless controls. All my shifting is done up here. So I go up there, down there. So basically, the majority, I'd say 98% of the TT today, I'm going to be in this position. So I'm just using here for shifting. Little aero brake levers. I've got power on. I've got Garmin pedals that are measuring my power, which will be monitoring what I'm doing throughout. So they're good. And then disc brakes, which again, was something that didn't exist when I was a pro. So having discs is a dream because in the old days, braking on time trial bikes was an absolute disaster. A couple of other things. The seat is a TT specific because in a time trial, we tend to be much more forward. And on a normal saddle, it goes quite narrow here and your sit bones don't have anywhere to rest. So by having these 2 rails that are quite wide at the front, when I'm perched across, I'm holding stability. As for the position at the front, it's become quite the trend through all the latest aerodynamics and learning. So it's slightly tilted up. And so the idea is to have your arms slightly up here, as narrow as possible with your shoulders tucked in like this. And as you'll see during the ride, the head tucked down as much as possible, all about reducing the frontal area to the max. Then lastly, the pièce de résistance for British time trialing, lights. So these will be on during the ride and on the back. So that's probably the only thing that is different to this bike to a World Tour Tour de France time trial bike. Fingers crossed it works.
I could sense David's nerves just before the start. And I could sense his speed soon after. By the time my colleague Mike had filmed him set off and then jumped in the car with me, David was already quite some way in front. We finally caught him just after the first of the 2 turns, and he was flying. I don't think I've ever followed a time trial in a car before, and I was genuinely taken aback by the speed he was carrying in the early part of the event. Thankfully, the rain had abated at this point in the evening, but with a stiff headwind on the longest section, David's aim was to dig deep and go a little into the red there, and then try and hang on for the final return leg. Unlike some of the faster courses in the UK, this is a single carriageway road with less traffic to create the beneficial flow of wind as they pass the rider. However, if the speed in my car was anything to go by, he was on for a sub 20-minute 10-mile time trial. Right through to the last kilometre, his cadence remained high, his position low. I couldn't help but think that David looked like he returned to his natural habitat. It may only have been his second time riding that bike, but together they looked in perfect harmony. It's just a shame for David that even though his bike, clothing and helmet are all state-of-the-art, none of them could tell him exactly where the finish line was.
Oh, I stopped before the finish.
Really?
Oh, it's the white car, and as I came by, the guy I was catching shouted his number. So I shouted my number as well. I just stopped. Yeah. So then I rolled back like 300 meters later, and it was finish.
I think we got your explanation just after you crossed the actual finish line, but just in case we didn't get the audio, can you explain yourself?
Yeah. Well, being a club time trial, there isn't a finishing arch. and I presumed the finish was where a white car was parked, which was then, I thought, confirmed by the fact that the guy I was catching as we passed the white car stopped pedaling and shouted his number out. So I shouted my number out and then...
And stopped pedaling.
And stopped pedaling and looked at my thing and it was 19:59 and I thought, I've done it. And I was enjoying that moment, and as I was enjoying that moment, I saw the finish rolling up towards me.
An immense amount of pleasure for about 20 seconds.
I got to enjoy that for 19 seconds.
Yeah, because we've got the official time, 2019?
2019. So
That's still very respectable.
yeah, I'm really pleased with it.
Was it the same old where you set out knowing what power you probably could average and the first part felt incredibly easy?
Well, you know what, here's a funny one. When I was a pro, I didn't use power. I was all on feel. I didn't use heart rate or anything. I'd just go on feel. So it's quite a new, and it's probably more important for me to use power now because when I was pro, I tended to have this habit of being able to kind of go over-under. I'd push really hard in the kind of slower sections and ease off in the faster sections, whereas now I kind of have to keep it fairly stable. And I was bang on average 370 watts, which is about where my...
That's where you expected to be, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And just remind us of what you would have done for that sort of duration before, roughly?
About 450.
So 80 watt power difference and you were a minute 15-ish slower than your best time.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got the stats, 370 watts, 20 minutes, 19 seconds. What about the experience?
I'm pleased I can do it, to be honest with you, because that's an effort that not long ago I wouldn't have even been able to imagine doing. And it's so funny because a lot of it, the perception of effort is almost exactly the same as it was when I was younger. But there's just missing those tweaks. And my cadence was 102, which is about bang on where I was when I was a pro. I could hold the position fine, which is weird as well, because as I said, that's the second time I've been on a time trial bike since 2014. But I did just slip back into it. So much of it is familiar to when I was at my best. And it was lovely, those moments where I kind of, the nostalgia of going fast and being tucked up in the position. It was kind of brought back a lot of memories, actually.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
Last question. Did you do the all-important thing of getting tea and cake in the village hall at the end?
I did. I mean, look at this. This is the first cup of tea I think I've drunk in 10 years.
No.
Genuinely, I don't drink tea ever. And I couldn't help myself. And it's actually quite nice.
I didn't have the tea. I just had the homemade chocolate cake. But it's great, isn't it? I mean, you can turn up on a Tuesday or a Thursday night. There's so many local time trials around this country.
But this is what I fell in love with. Yeah, I mean, this is how I got into it. And little did I know what it would turn into. But this is what I fell in love with, this quirky turning up at car parks.
It's quirky, isn't it?
Yeah, and lay-bys and just total mixture of abilities. And everyone's just so nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to come back to that after kind of everything I went through because it takes me back to where it started rather than where it ended.
Come full circle.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, Dan. And thank
you. You did well just to do it. I mean, I was saying to somebody earlier, having seen you, I could sort of feel in myself the nerves that I would experience because although you know you're not going to beat your old times, you've got something in your own head of this is what I think I can do, and you're going to be disappointed if you don't do it. But you're very close to it.
But I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it, to kind of relive those experiences, that feeling, because I never get it in my normal life. So to have all that apprehension, trepidation, and dare I say fear, it felt good.
Yeah. Well done again.
Thank you.
Maybe see you at the next one.
Yeah.
Looking at David's data file from that evening, he judged everything almost perfectly. His cadence was steady throughout, he had a slightly higher power average in the first 2/3 of the event, which incorporated that headwind section, and his heart rate steadily rose towards its maximum by the finish. Well, by where he finished, which, as we've established, wasn't the actual finish. Now, you may be wondering what time would David have done with his 2006 power of 450 watts on this new equipment? Well, Dr. Bridgewood has been crunching the numbers, and David would have done an 18-minute 38 with the conditions he had this time around, or an 18:31 had there been less wind. That's around half a minute faster than his 2006 record. All that leaves me to say is thank you to David for inviting us along, a happy 100th birthday to High Wycombe CC who organised the event, and a huge thank you to them and all the other clubs around the country who put on events like this week in, week out. We should all be grateful for what you do for the sport. Right, let us know what you think of David's performance. Were you expecting him to go faster or slower with his modern equipment given his power output? Let me know in the comment section down below.